So on today's show, we are going to talk about what Alex wants to talk about. And it is whether Trump is toast. And spoiler alert, he is not, no matter what Alex and Dave say. And we will also dissect Biden's troubles with Latino voters. You guys ready to start?
Ready, set, go.
All right, let's go. I'm just going to open with a question. It is Trump toast? And I'm going to let you guys say ridiculous things, and then I'm going to tell everybody why you're wrong. So let's start with you, Alex.
Well, this is why I wanted to talk about it, just to be clear, because I know that you would come in with a completely different thesis than what we have talked about on the show for like the last 6 weeks, which is Trump's slipping poll numbers, his head-to-head matchups, which now show a greater than 10-point advantage in some national polls. State-based polling really isn't any better. And I think that the case against Trump and why he is an underdog in this election, I wouldn't say, of course he can still win, but he is an underdog in my mind. And it is, I would explain it this way, that for the duration of his presidency, there have always been a critical mass of voters who don't like the tweets. They think that the White House is too chaotic. They maybe don't like Trump personally, as far as who he is personally. But they were willing to tolerate all of it because, simply put, the economy was good, right? His actions didn't directly affect their life. So even if they didn't like the show that was going on in the White House, they didn't think that it was their life hadn't, necessitated them turning against Trump in any way. And by the way, they don't really like Democrats either. So they were willing to put up with all of it. The reason that this is such a dangerous situation for Trump now is that that's ended. The economy isn't good. The public is deeply pessimistic about Trump's response to the coronavirus. And again, for those voters who are willing to tolerate everything that Trump brings because otherwise their lives were going okay, that's no longer the case. Everyone's life in America has been affected in some way by coronavirus. And I know that this has always been the holy grail for Democrats, right? That they would be able to draw a straight line from the chaos that people think Trump creates in the White House to how it affects people's everyday life, their pocketbook, and they're able to do it at long last. They weren't able to do it with impeachment. It's why Trump's numbers, if anything, rose after impeachment. This is a fundamentally different problem. And I would just say quickly, not only did you have coronavirus, you actually had back-to-back national crises between the coronavirus and then the death of George Floyd. At a critical time, people start to really formulate their opinion about the election in that second fiscal quarter. There are academic models that when they try to measure the economy's impact on the election, they draw from the second quarter. It's that late spring, early summer. That's when people start to see the election. And in these back-to-back crises, the public overwhelmingly thinks Trump failed, right? His numbers are overwhelmingly negative in how he responded to both. His response to the Black Lives Matter protests, in fact, have been worse than the numbers for his response to the coronavirus. And I think that 1-2 punch is going to be very difficult for him to recover from.
Dave?
Yeah, so I remember in 2016, I was actually asked on Fox News after the Access Hollywood tape broke. I was on a panel.
Oh, God, I remember that weekend.
And it was like the most insane 72 hours from like Friday through it was just nuts. And I was asked, but it was before the last debate, I was asked, is Trump, this question, is he toast? Can he win? And I said, there's no way Trump could come back from this. I'm on tape. It has been played back to me. So I am not going to be on this podcast saying anything close to Donald Trump is toast.
Double down, Dave. Double down.
I am reminded of that clip. And, history speaks for itself. I will say, just empirically by the data, right now, July 23rd, Joe Biden is a strong favorite to be the next president. Like, there is no other way to look at it, given everything that Alex just laid out. But just looking at the data, the reams of data coming out of these states, and people are going to say, well, the polls were wrong. Hillary was never up by 10 points, ever, anywhere against Trump. The leads are much different. Now, we've got a lot of this campaign left to play. We got 100 days left. We got a VP pick that Biden has to make that is going to be fascinating, I think, for a multitude of reasons, racial, demographic, ideological. We've got virtual conventions that have to be pulled off in August, which we still don't know. I mean, these things are weeks away, and we don't know what like these conventions will look like, how different they will be. And then we've got debates. And, you know, the debates are going to be huge, I think. They could be record-setting. And as Alex and I have talked about this week, we've got a different voting process. People have got to vote differently. They're going to vote early. They're going to vote by mail. They've got to learn their state, their different laws in their state to figure out how to get their ballot counted. So we got a lot of game left to play. And so I do think a lot can change. And I'm not going to rule out a Trump comeback. I think we will all be writing about a story, possibly around Labor Day, that this race is tightening. But if you asked me to bet, I would still bet that
I'm not asking you to bet. Yeah,
okay,
no, I'm not asking you to bet.
I think he's an underdog, and that's a fascinating thing for an incumbent president to be an underdog. It usually doesn't happen. Incumbents usually win.
I feel like a broken record on this, but man, I just don't know why. I don't know why the political reporting class continues to look at these polls as predictive or take guidance on their story selection or story assignments based on them, because they are such crap. So really, I mean, I'm just going to say it again, and I say it every single podcast. I say it every time we have a meeting. Don't talk to me about national polls, right? So we've got Biden +8. We have Biden +10. But here's
state polls have Biden up by, like, I mean, there was a state poll that had him up by 13 in Pennsylvania.
So I want you to listen to this, okay? Because here's a blast from the past. June 27th of 2016, Clinton +7. August 10th of 2016, Clinton +7. So why must you all continue to do this to yourselves? I don't understand. But if we must, then yes, let's talk about some numbers. Let's talk about numbers that are actually determinative. Just go and play around on Real Clear Politics electoral map, because it's so much fun. I really do encourage all the listeners to go to Real Clear Politics, click around, find the electoral map, and start moving some numbers. It's a fantastic exercise just for kicks, right? This very morning that we're recording this podcast, do you know how many states remain toss-ups? Anybody? 15. 15 for a total of more than 200 electoral college votes. Among these states, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. And trust you me, Florida loves Trump, right? So one of the biggest problems with one of the side effects of coronavirus locking all the reporters in their houses is that you guys aren't getting out and getting down to where the human beings are outside of DC or even outside of New York or whatever big cities everybody's living in, right? I drove across the state a couple of weekends ago to Naples, and I swear to you, every single yard had a Trump sign, every one of them. And now you can see that when you get out of the cities. This is not new. It is the same phenomenon. Trump voters are baked. It's baked.
But they're
minority. That doesn't mean he's going to win. It means the contest is going to be this narrow. And the most important thing that happens between now and election day is stuff he can control. It's stuff he can control. It's not what the crap he says on Twitter. It's the economy. And it's whether there's another stimulus package. It's whether he can pressure states and cities and counties, maybe not cities, but counties and states to open up schools. It's stuff that he can control around the economic narrative. Because if the economy feels like it's recovering at a nice pace, if it feels like something is normalizing, then his chance of getting reelection pops.